The Bliss Business Podcast, the show about empathy, connection, and consciousness in business. Today's episode is brought to you by Zero Company, your paid search, social media, and programmatic ad experts.
So you're saying that's Stanley, the sausage dog next to you? That
Yeah, that's right. He's lying down pretty close to me, so he's still I guess he's technically still a puppy. He's 3.5, so he's full of energy and certainly helps me keep my steps up every day.
Hello and welcome back to the show, everyone. We are talking about empathy and leadership with our guests today. I'm Steven Sakash here with Mike Galuski. We are live, so if you have questions or comments, send them along and we'll try to get them in the mix. Mike, introduce our guest today.
Yeah, Steven, for sure. Happy to do so. Introduce Bren. So Bren Hennessy, he has over 15 years of experience in technology consulting and has been really a trailblazer in data and in the AI space for the last 5 years. He's built really an incredible company, Spark. You can find them there at spark-hq.com. They specialize in data, AI, and software delivery solutions, really helping organizations around the world become more data-driven. And one piece that I thought was excellent about Bren's organization is they're great at empathizing with organizations that maybe have really complex environments or are struggling to move more quickly. And so Bren's team does a great job at, coming in, empathizing, and delivering on the solution. So as well with Bren's background, he played high-level sports, also brings a unique perspective to his type of leadership. As we like to say, striving constantly for that extra 1%. We know that it can make a big difference between success and stagnation or success and pure failure. So we're thrilled to have you today, Bren. We welcome you to the show. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Stephen. Thanks for having me. Really looking forward to having an engaging conversation with both of you today.
Hey, Bren. So you've had a long career in the tech consulting, more recently data AI, but Mike mentioned your sports background. When you get to a certain level of competition, it involves kind of this intense focus on your own individual performance, but also that fine-tuning that teamwork. How has your sporting background shaped your leadership style, especially in terms of empathy and team dynamics?
That's a very interesting question to start off with. I think initially I think I played team sports at a high level and also individual sports at a high level. And I think regardless of being in preferring an individual sport, I think, you might be an individual on the court, but there's a team behind you that supports you, right? So you're always in a team environment. But I think early on in my career, I would probably say it was a little bit of a struggle, if I'm honest, to go from the sporting world and be very, I suppose, focused on yourself and a little bit selfish about yourself, to coming into a corporate team environment whereby things are a little bit more relaxed. I don't think you can be as direct initially when you're starting off your career coming from a sporting background into a corporate background. And that's something that I think I was lucky with at the start. I had people empathize with me. And they brought me on a journey to understand, to be able to be a little bit more inclusive of a lot of people's thoughts, opinions. And I think early on in my career, I was very lucky that I had a couple of pretty inspirational leaders, but also leaders who taught me a really good lesson. And that's be comfortable in silence and listening. All of us can get animated about something and we can get passionate about something, but when we can talk over each other a lot. But I think it's an ability to be able to sit and listen and empathize actually get you a lot further along the line. And that's something that I was told early on in my career, and I've tried to keep that. Now I'll be the first to admit, at times that's a struggle depending on what I've been doing or what we're talking about, but it's something that I'm very aware of. And I think that's something around, I think, young people coming into the workforce today, being aware of what you're good at and what you're not good at is really important. Because if a lot of people, depending on the different areas that you work in, a lot of people can either niche down on, what they're really good at, and that's great, and they become subject matter experts in that area. But what you're not doing is you're not working on the stuff that you're weak at, because people feel more comfortable to do things that they like, they enjoy, and that they excel at, versus maybe some things that they don't like or don't enjoy, but are also very foundational to being a more well-rounded profession.
And I think, like as an athlete too, you sometimes you really focus on those weaknesses too, and those areas. So it's not that big of a transition for you. But it's interesting, as you mentioned, it's like athletes, you come in here, you're hyper competitive mindset sometimes. And so you have to come into this environment that's a little bit different with a lot of different people, and you got to collaborate and you've got to build that trust. And like from working with teams, it's like where the sum is greater than the parts, right? If you can get everything to kind of cohesively come together. So how do you create that environment where you can have that sort of personal success and also that collective success? Any tips you've got there? That's going through all that yourself.
Yeah, I think what's really important is to understand what you excel at, what you're good at, but also to be able to have an ability to take a step back and take your ego out of it, actually, and say, what am I not good at, and how can I build people and a team around me to support me at what I'm not good at, but potentially they're a lot better at. Because you talk about the sum of all parts. It's about everyone pulling in the same direction, and it's about getting a vision for people to buy into, to make sure that they understand that their part is really, really important, because without their part, the whole team doesn't function. And that can be challenging at times, because in every organization, people have different parts to play. Some have very big parts to play. Some have very small parts to play. And I guess it's about bringing people on the journey, regardless of how big or small their part is, because if you take out their part, that's when dysfunction happens. So I think that's something that within Spark, we've built a good team to ensure that we have everything that we need. But also what's, I think, very healthy about a team is talking about what we're lacking or what we can improve on. It's not always the nicest or easiest thing to do. It's easier to talk about the stuff that we're really good at, right? Mm-hmm. But for us, it's very important to acknowledge what we're weak at or what we're not delivering on, because if you can't have honest conversations in business, you're not really going to move the dial. You're just going to kind of float at the same level. And look, the reality is we're a high-performing organization. We're a high-performing team. And while a lot of people talk about high performance and a lot of people like to be a part of high performance, it's not for everyone, guys. It really isn't, right? And I think along the way you learn and you bring people into the environment who maybe haven't had exposure to a high performance environment before. And some of them really excel and they really like it. And they're like, my goodness, how have I not found this before? But others really struggle. And that's tough for people, because you're not going to change your high performance environment for someone who's struggling. So there's a fine balance there.
Yeah, for sure. And I think situations are always really different. I always like to say, to a hammer, everything looks like a nail, right? But you really can't approach every situation just like that. So maybe digging a little bit deeper to the point on empathy. We referred in the intro a little bit to the incremental improvements, that extra 1% as being very critical. So how do you, for example, ensure that empathy plays a part in achieving those small, incremental, pieces, to make a much more significant improvement? How does empathy play into that?
I think one thing that's really important to recognize, whoever you're in a room with, is trying to understand people's backgrounds. So like within organizations, we've got different departments, we've got different skill sets. Some people are technical, some people are non-technical, some people are customer facing, some people are internally facing. And just really making sure that you're very, very aware of who you're speaking with as a group, but also as as a one-on-one individual. I think that's where empathy really comes in. So for example, in our organization, we're always quite aware of when we're having discussions with both technical and non-technical stakeholders. Someone technical might be explaining something and they might be going too low level to be able to, I suppose, make the non-technical person understand. And it's not about saying, oh, stop, I don't understand what you're talking about. It's just about understanding, okay, this is how this person communicates because they're a more technically minded person. And the same goes for the non-technical people within our organization. It's a nuanced way of communicating, whether you're on one side of the technical conversation or the other side of the non-technical conversation. I think just understanding, okay, I'm in a room with both non-technical and technical stakeholders. Let's just remember when someone's speaking or making a point, what side of the room they come for. And I think that, as a non-technical person, I think that's something that I haven't struggled with because I got a lot of exposure early on in my career speaking with technical people, and they were able to help me understand their point of view. But there's a lot of people in our team whereby, it's a challenge because they ask a question and they already think, oh, I know what I want on the outcome, but they have to listen to the more elongated technical explanation to be able to get to their point. And it's just about having that patience, balance. But the most important word you used is empathy. Because if you don't take people's form of communication into consideration, you're just not going to get on with your colleagues. It's as simple as that, right? So it's a fine balance because not everyone's wired the same way.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point and a very unique perspective, because a lot of times we would want the non-technical or the technical person to adjust to us, right? Versus like us, adjusting to them. So yeah, it's a really good point.
Hey, Bren, we've kind of talked about it a little bit, but we haven't really got into it. Tell us a little bit about Spark and the types of clients you serve.
Yeah, sure. So Spark's, we're a data platform organization. So we build single source of truth data platforms for large scale enterprise organizations worldwide. We've got offices in Dublin in Ireland, where we were founded. We've got an R&D center in Malaga, in Spain, in the south of Spain. Customers we've got worldwide. So we work with customers in Europe, customers in the United States. And a lot of the time, what we do with the platforms that we build, it's all about creating a single source of truth for an organization. So within large, complex organizations, you've got probably 6 or 7 departments. Those departments don't always speak with each other. They don't always use the same tooling. They don't always have the access to be able to understand what an other department is doing. And our platform allows them to have a unified view of that, which then allows them to leverage internally their data to be able to make better, more informed decisions. So I'll give you a really simple analogy that you guys will certainly be able to resonate with. If you have sales data and marketing data feeding into Spark's platform, if marketing are able to see that sales are selling to China at a 74% margin last quarter, well, that's really going to inform marketing. Maybe we should double down on selling and pushing our marketing campaigns to China. Without our platform, they wouldn't have an ability to be able to see that sales information. So that's what we talk about, leveraging internal data, is whereby you're able to make an informed decision, maybe not from your own department, but from someone else's department. But with our platform, you're able to have a whole view, 360 view of the organization. So that's really what our platform does. It really helps organizations streamline not just departmental silos, but also, I guess, silos in general across the organization. Because what we find with either large scale ups or large enterprise organizations, as you scale, your infrastructure doesn't always scale as quickly, right? Because you're gaining momentum, you're making lots of sales, you're onboarding new customers, you're gaining market territory. That's all really good stuff, right? But the fundamentals, sometimes a lot of organizations say, oh, we'll get to that later. And that's really where we come in and really help them scale up that internal infrastructure to be able to support all departments within the organization. And that's really what's very unique about our platform.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, that scale part of the company building process that's often where I think you see empathy getting stretched in a business, just because, well, for a variety of reasons, right? You're trying to do things rapidly. You're trying to systemize stuff, and it gets lost in the equation sometimes, or just trampled completely. I don't imagine you deal with that too much with the data side of things, but you're introducing new software to a company or a new platform. You've got to have empathy in that process, right, in order to get people to buy in and all that, right? Is that a challenge?
I think one of the Spark as a company, we actually have developed really good empathy with our customers, because one of the main reasons why a lot of organizations bring us in to help them is very much around, we can move at a pace that most large scale organizations simply just can't, because they're so large. So we kind of come in and are able to move at a pace, and that sounds great, and there's a lot of instant impact in terms of what our platform does. But you also have to understand from the customer side as well. Like, it's a pretty easy statement to say, but humans really don't like change, right? So if you're going to change something, you've got to bring humans on a journey. And internal stakeholders for our customers, it's not a case of just dropping our platform into their environment and saying, guys, everything that you guys have done is kind of suboptimal, and so now you kind of got to listen to us. That's never going to work in a relationship. So we have to empathize, understand what our value add is, that we're able to come in and add value quickly and move quicker than the customer, but also bring the empathy to the customer in terms of understanding, we know that you guys either can't or haven't been able to move at the pace that you would maybe like to move at, or that we move at. So it's having that fine balance of understanding the customer's point of view and their environment and how things have been done versus our platform and what our platform is going to do for them moving forward, and showing and selling those benefits to them as well. But there's always a fine balance, right? I think anyone who's working with organizations, when you come in as a third party, I think it's always a fine balance there. And if you lack empathy with your customer and where their current position is, you're really going to struggle and have friction in the relationship. And that's something that, we really, really are very open with our customers at the very, very start of the journey.
You mentioned humans don't like change. Where are you with like the kind of AI revolution coming up here? Are you concerned about the future of AI, or optimistic, or both?
As a whole, if I was to go on one side or the other, I would say I'm very optimistic on AI. But what I would say is that Spark as an organization, we're extremely pragmatic on AI. So I do believe that AI is a technology that really is going to move the dial, that we haven't probably seen in technology for 25, 30 years, really. But in saying that, I think it's really important to understand how new the technology is, particularly if you look at, there's a lot of noise around large language models at the moment. That technology is really, really impactful, and you can get some really small, quick wins. But the reality of the situation is, Microsofts of the world, Amazons of the world, Googles of the world, they're phenomenal marketing people, right? So they're selling the capabilities. And one thing that's not spoken about enough is, one, how new the technology is, but two, from a production point of view, how still unstable it is. Like, if anyone thinks there's AI in a box that you can just purchase, like we're nowhere near there yet. And at times, that's quite hard to say to a customer, right? You're speaking with a CEO. We speak with global CEOs all the time, and they're getting a lot of pressure from boards around implementing AI. And like, our conversation is always like, yeah, for sure. You have certain unique use cases that could be really AI friendly and you could get some value out of, but we need to sort your data first, because rubbish in rubbish out. And like, for an example, I've got a stat from the UK market last year. 73% of all AI initiatives from large scale enterprise organizations failed last year to create an ROI. And it's not because there's not the use cases there, but if you don't have your foundational data platform in place or single source of truth, it's very, very hard for any sort of AI initiative to become successful. So that's really, I think, something that's not as popular to speak about. So we're very, very pragmatic on AI, pro AI. But of course, you asked, are we scared? I wouldn't say I'm scared, but I can certainly tell you that in the wrong hands, AI can do loads of harmful things. But a lot of technologies over the years could be said the same, right? Like you look at social media platforms, you know, which is better? Does the positives of being able to connect with people across the world outweigh the negatives of a lot of trolls? You know, some people will say yes, some people will say no. But I think, you know, as a society as a whole, I would say that it's probably net positive. And that's where I think probably AI will end up as well.
I wouldn't say I'm scared, but you know, I think that probably sums up a lot of people's AI feeling. It's like, do you think there's potential for AI to help? You know, we're talking about empathy. Do you think there's a potential for AI to help enhance empathy for companies in different ways? I know some of the development we're doing, that's kind of what we're focused on. But yeah, what's your thoughts around empathy and AI?
Yeah, I think it's obviously last year it made some traction with some comments that former Google employees talked about AI being sentient. I think, you know, we're a big believer, and we talk with our customers all the time at Spark around AI with human in the loop. Okay, so AI decision making, but humans continue to be in the loop. And I think that's probably something, you know, as the technology develops, and I guess as humans get more confidence with AI, and there's more success stories. Like, you know, there's some success stories and maybe some content at the moment, but you know, I'd love someone to be able to talk about, you know, the multiple success stories of AI. There's not, because it's new technology. We're trying, we're iterating, we're failing fast, we're learning quicker. But the reality is we're at the very start of the AI journey. And I think, you know, having empathy with teams as well. I think a lot of organizations are scrambling globally at the moment to upskill their teams and their organizations. And that's going to take a while to see the benefits of that. People don't just become AI experts overnight, although, you know, you would believe some people who are very good at marketing that they are AI experts, right? But that's going to take time. And I think, you know, as humans, we're always quite cautious creatures. And I think that's probably a smart approach on how we move forward with AI. But make no mistake about it, AI is going to make people's lives easier. That's for sure. And they should be able to focus on more higher level tasks. Yes, there will be jobs that will be taken away by AI, but that's nothing has changed over the last, you know, 1,000 years. There's always been technologies that have taken jobs away, and people have been redistributed to do probably higher level, more impactful, more enjoyable jobs.
Yeah. I think we've got a question here from the audience. How do you cultivate a culture of empathy at Spark, particularly in a data-driven industry that can often feel more technical and less personal?
That's a good question.
Yeah, that's a really good question, actually. And it's something that we talk about internally quite a lot. Like we make very data-driven decisions. You know, data is at the core of what our business is. But I think one of the things that we do as a firm really well is we're first of all, we're technology agnostic, so we work with a lot of different technology stacks within the platforms that we build. But I think something to point out that's really, really important is understanding and focusing on the business outcome or objective. And so a lot of people, particularly technical people, younger in their career as well, that I've seen a lot, is they focus on the technology, right? The technology is simply an enabler for the business solution or outcome. And when you have everyone rowing in the same direction, and you have very data-driven people understanding what business problem we want to achieve, not what technical problem. There's loads of technical problems, and we have to get over those technical problems every single day, but not losing sight of what the business outcome or goal is for our platform and our customers. That really, really helps with empathy, because you can strip it back to, this platform is not really integrating because of X, Y, or Z data source. But in reality, if we strip it back to, well, what are we trying to achieve here from a business outcome? The technology noise, it kind of gets put to the background. And I think that's really healthy. I think a lot of organizations in our industry are quite poor at that, actually. I think they focus too much on the technology. They make too many excuses. Oh, the technology's not working because of X, Y, or Z. Whereas we really focus on the business problem and solution. Because when you're dealing with C-level executives, all they want to know is hard numbers, ROI, business outcome. How can they either, increase profit or decrease cost? That's the reality of the environment that we're working in. And you have to have real strong empathy internally to be able to handle those conversations.
So a little bit earlier, Bren, you were kind of talking about your platform and wanting to really empathize, I guess, with a client. You can't just come in there and just sort of drop it in. Empathy, sometimes we think about it as definitely like an intangible skill. But I wanted to get back to maybe a moment about how empathy was applied in a practical sense. So can you share maybe like an example, where empathy, say as a leader or maybe from a mentor that you had in the past, helps solve like a major, business challenge, or influence kind of like a key decision at Spark?
Yeah, sure. I think it's a really good question. I think there's been times. So we're still quite a young organization, right? We're 4 years old, and we scaled pretty rapidly during COVID. And one of the things I think that we've come up against actually is when we're working with our customers, a lot of the time they're looking for really quick fixes, right? They're looking for, we're in trouble. We need to get more market share. Our competitors are beating us to the punch. Let's get Spark's platform in, and all our problems will be solved. That's just not accurate, right? And it's quite easy to be, if you put your salesperson hat on, it's quite easy to sell that vision. But what we've learned through empathy actually is when you empathize with the customer of what their pain point is, and we had many examples of this, whereby a customer is really under pressure, their competitors are really taking market share, and they're really desperate for a solution, right? And our solution can help them get there, but it's not going to be the golden nugget that's going to solve all of their problems. And I think a lot of organizations can maybe oversell that. And we would have had an example of working with a global CEO who was under a lot of pressure. I probably would say his job was on the line at this stage, whereby, he had tried a lot of different solutions. They hadn't worked. There was a lot of investment gone in. There was going to be even more investment if he was going to invest with Spark's platform. And he really empathized with us to say, guys, this is probably my last chance, and I'm betting on you guys, right? That's a lot of pressure.
No pressure.
Right.
It's a lot of pressure, but the fact that he was actually able to empathize with us and actually tell us out straight, that's, CEOs are pretty tight-lipped, right? They have to be. But there's political sensitivities in a lot of organizations. They're listed on the stock exchange. Shareholders, want their dividends. There's a lot of different things going on. And the fact that he was able to really, I guess, empathize with us, and we were able to receive that empathy, but also give it back, really helped us to say, right, we've really got to take serious care with this customer to make sure that this person is set up for success. So that's one that really resonates with me, because I haven't seen a global CEO listed on the stock exchange really empathize with a partner like that before. So that was quite inspiring, I would say.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's amazing, right? And then be able to have everyone on the team also carry that weight at the same time, right, is a big responsibility. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. That definitely hits home.
We've got another question come in from the audience. Any effective systems you've seen that have helped empathy scale with orgs?
That systems is a really good question, actually. Listen, I would say that one thing that we are as an organization is we're a pretty honest organization. So we're not one of these organizations where we say, every day is amazing and our culture is amazing every day and everyone feels really, really great when they turn up every single day. And we don't have any issues. We have loads of issues. We're a young scaling company who have scaled pretty fast in terms of number of people within the organization. And we've invested in some systems early days because we believed it would make our lives easier. But, we haven't been able to invest in all the systems that we need to support, one, our internal people, but two, our customers as well, right? So, when you're a young organization, you want to do everything, but you can't. That's just the realities. And I think a lot of the time, I think I would say one thing is early days, we invested in a couple of really key systems for us that we knew would support the growth of our people. And that really has helped. But I think the biggest learning for us is we were quite honest with our people. So we grew from 3 co-founders to 20 people, basically overnight. And then we grew from 20 to 35 within the space of 4 or 5 months, right? That's a lot of people to organically onboard. It's different cultures, different backgrounds, different skill sets. And one of the things that we did really well, I think, in the early days of Spark, particularly in the first couple of years, is we empathized a lot with our new joiners to say, guys, not everything is perfect here. And you're going to have to wait to have X and Y support systems because they're simply just not a priority now. And I think if I look back on my career and I look at organizations who've been really successful and others that have maybe stagnated, I think a lot of leadership teams feel a lot of pressure to always say, we've got the answer to everything, right? And the reality is that's not true at all. Leadership are spinning a lot of different plates every day. They're getting some decisions right. They're getting some decisions wrong. And I think we empathized with our people very early on to say, hey, we're not going to get everything right. You're not going to have all the systems that you need, but we promise you that we're going to work together to make sure that we have the systems that we need. And, now we're 4 years in. I think we've probably got, a good 85% of the systems that we need to support our people. There's still probably 15% that needs to happen. But we've always been very honest with people about what the priorities are for the business, when systems are going to come in place and when other systems aren't. And I think that's more of the example I can give for Spark in terms of having empathy with our people around either the lack or the ability to be able to bring in a system that helped.
I think you mentioned COVID a little bit and starting your business during COVID, and you started under circumstances where you starting a business and you couldn't meet physically with the people you're starting the business with, and you had like the 1 or 2 kilometer restrictions on where you could travel during that time. And so you're starting this business as remote, and then you're going to onboard people probably remote, and now you're a hybrid. Finally, out of that situation, but now you can connect. And I think you've seen the benefits of being remote and the difficulties of being remote, right? Sure. So you went to that hybrid, the hybrid solution. That's the way we are too, is hybrid at our headquarters anyway. But there's a study that came out in 2021, probably around when you were starting the business, that said 76% of employees feel engaged when working with an empathetic workplace. So I think building that empathetic culture is kind of vital when you're in that remote environment, because there's a lot of companies that kind of struggled with that. But if you want engagement, you really got to kind of dive deep into this must-have empathetic kind of approach, right? To have success building in that kind of environment.
Completely. And honestly, I really think organizations today, it's one of their biggest struggles. I actually don't think that we have the hybrid work environment figured out yet. I don't think we have the perfect.
I don't think we do either. It's a challenge.
I mean, globally. I'm talking globally, not
Yeah.
even just in Spark, but globally, right? And again, we talk about leadership, right? And leaders being comfortable, maybe, or uncomfortable to talk about, well, actually, we're still kind of figuring this out. This is kind of weird. Sometimes we think remote is great. Sometimes we think in the office is better. We're fluctuating all the time, right? And you need to give certainty to your people. Like, that's really, really important. But at the same time, when there's something that you're iterating on, and I think the whole world is still iterating on hybrid working, right? There's massive benefits, but there's also really big drawbacks as well. And we certainly don't sit on either side of the fence. We sit in the middle. We're pro-remote. We think that there's great things that happen there, but there's also stuff that's, from an engagement point of view that people lack. And we're very pro the office, but there's also an understanding of flexibility, travel times, families, all that type of stuff. So the world's figuring that out. Spark is figuring that out as well. And I think it's okay for leaders to talk about that they still haven't figured that out, right? Even like if you look at some of the technologies, right? Like one of the we talked, and we got a question earlier on in the show about systems that what you invested in that helped with empathy, right? We invested in a HR system that gives prompt feedbacks every 2 or 3 days, like just a 5-second question to our employees to say, might be about how are you feeling today, or do you feel supported in your role, or just these random questions. And then over time, we've collated a data set to be able to say, oh, actually, this looks like more of a serious issue than we've actually taught, right? So then we double down and make sure we speak to our people about that. But that's an engagement tool that allows us to be able to help our remote people. But versus we get a lot of feedback from that saying, what I really don't want to do is go into the office 4 days a week and just sit on Teams or a Zoom call, because I do that from my home. So when I'm in the office, I really want to have in-person experiences and really connect with people in person in a different way. So and again, it's not fluid at the moment, guys. Globally, it's not fluid, and I think it's okay for leadership to say that.
Yeah, you mentioned it's okay for leadership. I think what we're kind of hitting on in a few areas here, but I haven't really said it, it's vulnerability, right? It's leaders being able to be vulnerable. And sometimes people view that as a weakness, but in reality, it takes courage, but it also builds trust, right? And so when leaders show it and you build that sort of caring, open environment, then you can use like the software that you're using where you're asking people for their opinions on things, and they're going to be honest with you. And you create this sort of safer space for everyone to be just authentic, right? And true to themselves a little bit more, which I think is really kind of important when we're talking about like an empathetic work culture. You agree with that?
Yeah, completely. And I think, you're right? Some people can say, no, that's a weakness. And by the way, actually, funny enough, if you had have asked me as a young 20-year-old, I absolutely would say that answer. That's so weak. Sure. Oh my goodness. Like, what are you talking about? You need to show that you're strong, and, you need to make sure that but whereas now I probably sit in the middle, right? You need to show that you're assertive. You need to show confidence, that people have confidence in you, but you also need to show that little bit, as you said, Stephen, that little bit of vulnerability so people can relate to you. Like, we talked about AI earlier on. We're humans. We're very emotionally sensitive, and sometimes people can get into working situations where they think they're robots. They think, oh no, I just need to do my tasks and get through the day. That's not where you flourish. You flourish when you really help organizations and people within organizations to really flourish by ensuring that you empathize with them and show moments of vulnerability and then get back to task. I think so. It's a fine balance.
Yeah, I think so too. It's just when you get a little older and mature, you kind of a little more artistic with how you manage things. And this is one of those. Yeah, this is one of those artist tools, I think, on there. Bren, before we close, I want to ask a question I like to pose to many of our guests. We've talked about empathy and leadership, but what's the role of genuine love in the workplace? There's a mindset, that in certain stages of consciousness, like, no, it doesn't belong. And then there's, I think, sort of a growing effort to be like, yeah, no, we want a little bit more of a genuine, caring, loving workplace. What's your thought of that, about the role of love in the workplace?
Ooh, that's a question I have not been asked before, Stephen. So kudos for that. I think
we bring the haymaker at the end. So
I think if I'm answer that honestly and authentically, I'm very much a person who believes that an organization or any company that you enter, has a duty to help you flourish as a human being in your career. But it's an organization. It's a corporate for-profit organization. And everyone knows the rules of engagement. And I would say the working life versus your personal life. I personally see it as black and white. I don't see them spilling over into each other. Now, of course, personal lives and professional lives can affect either or, right? And you have to have empathy to ensure that if someone's having a tough time at home, then maybe that you need to listen a little bit more. But I'd be very conscious, and I've been someone as a leader, as a manager, as an individual contributor in different organizations. I've been always pretty strict on making sure that there's a lot of respect within an organization, and you have a duty to make someone flourish. But I'd be quite cautious on going down the too personal, in lovey-dovey route. That would be something that I wouldn't be for as a leader. But again, like a lot of the topics that we're speaking about here today, I think there's a really fine balance, and I think you articulated really well in your last comments around just being artistic. I think you need to be artistic with vocabulary as well. I don't see love in a corporate environment. That word, I don't know if that connects. There might be a different word that connects, like respect, flourishing, but love. I think for me, it's on the personal life side of things. So I don't really relate that to the corporate life.
Yeah, no, I get that. I hear that. It's kind of why I ask it, is just because I do think it does need to be discussed a little more than it is. And I liked what you first said, I think, was based around like empowering people in a way, right? And making them better, making them flourish. And I think there are a lot of tools that can help them do that. But yeah, like you said, it's artistic, I think, that process. Bren, where can people find out more about what you do and connect with you?
Yeah, great. So, personally, you can connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active there. And second of all, you can connect at spark-hq.com. That's our website. We've got a lot of interesting stuff there. We're actually hiring at the moment as well. So if anyone wants to get into the data and AI space, please reach out, speak to myself, speak to some of our team members. We're a really honest bunch. We talk about life at Spark, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So yeah, love to hear from people if they're interested.
Well, it's been a pleasure having you on the show. Thank you for joining us. Thank our guests and the listeners. Great questions today.
Yeah, great answers.
Yeah, and great answers, of course.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. I've really enjoyed the chat.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
We'll be back on Tuesday, and we'll see you then on the next Bliss Business Podcast.